Good
Hey, good
morning.
morning, everybody. Here live in the Fastport Studios in the historic Degas House and the birthplace of a lot of stuff like gumbo and also jazz and also trucking radio. Now, most of you guys understand by now that I'm kind of semi-retired, and that's going to take a long time to roll down the road. But part of my deal is that I show up for the occasional auspicious occasion. And
Woo!
this morning, ladies and gentlemen, on the road, off the road, on the side of the road, in this industry, outside of this industry, this is truly an auspicious occasion. We started talking about this maybe, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, saying, hey, this number's coming up, this number's coming up. Well, it is today. This is our 1,000th episode of Tech Talk with TMC, the Technology and Maintenance Council. And the guy who started it all with me way back when, he's got the date. I never have dates. Well, I've been on a few dates and then I got married. But, but Robert Braswell, the executive director. And when Robert started, he wasn't the executive director. He was just a young sprout. He was the technical director of TMC, is with us this morning, along with one of our longtime and dearest friends in the industry or out of the industry, one of the pioneers of Tech Talk with TMC, Darry Stuart. Robert, good morning. Welcome. Thank you. Congratulations and all that stuff that you say on an auspicious occasion. Good morning.
Well, good morning, Dave. It is great to be back here for the 1,000th episode of Tech Talk with TMC. It's been a great ride, and it's all thanks to you for having us on the program to get a chance to share this information with our listening audience. You know, ordinarily we would just share information with our members that come to TMC meetings, but this gave us a whole new venue to share the information, the institutional knowledge that our members create, and hopefully improve the industry.
Yeah, and one of the things too is that there are different I won't say levels, but there are different sections of trucking. You have the corporate section, you have the fleet section, you have the technology section, of course, the folks who make the trucks roll so that the guys who roll them can keep rolling and all of that stuff. But our listeners, by and large, have always been the men and women behind the wheel. Now, a lot of them own their own trucks or aspire to that. Some don't. Have made a great career, as company drivers throughout the decades. And you guys really opened up a world of opportunity, of inspiration, education, and knowledge, and also camaraderie by opening up a special, really cheap, and the price has never gone up, for the small fleet membership category at TMC, the Technology and Maintenance Council, meaning from 1 up to 100 trucks, $150 a year. You get everything. You get all of the manuals. I still have my old big library manual that kind of makes that thing is so big, my bookshelf is bowed where that book is. Tell us a little bit about that, and what was our date on the first show ever? Now, let me just say this. We sort of had a soft opening in a sense, because we kind of tried this out with two or three guys, Darry being one of them, to say, hey, you think this is going to float? You think this will roll down the road? Let's see what happens. And the next thing you know, it happened. And the next thing you know, here we are at program number 1,000. Take it away, Robert.
Well, it all started back in September of 2004 when we were doing our fall meeting in Nashville, Tennessee. That was the time was your backyard. You were broadcasting the program from there. And we were invited to come by to the studios through an intermediary of both of ours, which was John Hawkins Benton of Bendix, I believe it was, and Al Cohen from PSI.
Yeah.
And so you invited us and myself and Dave Reherk, who was our general chairman at the time, to drop by. And we did 2 hours or 3 hours with you on the program. And we thought that was really cool. It was like we were in this little house in the middle of nowhere in Nashville. It was like Mayberry meets Star Trek. It was like really cool in that studio. And, that was great. We did that for that day. And then, a couple months, 3 months later, I got a call from you. Said, hey, we're going to be in town at NOMA down at the SiriusXM studios. Why don't you come by? We'll do a couple of shows. And so we had Tom Cuthbertson, Susan Chandler, and Peggy Fisher happened to be in town at the time. We all did. I guess it was a pilot for Tech Talk with TMC. That was in April of 2005, and the first official show was June 14th, 2005, and that was with Brad Van Riper at the time with Truck Light.
You know, it's funny you say a little house in Nashville. That little house in Nashville was built in 1940, and we were Mayberry there, and here we are in a place that kind of represents the French Impressionist art movement of the late 19th century, the Edgar Degas house, where he actually lived and painted for a couple of years here. He painted 18 of his works here, and this is where Degas actually became an Impressionist. He never liked the term, but he was kind of given that term because he painted stuff that didn't exactly look like it, but it kind of felt like it more. I mean, we won't go down that road, but history is abounding here with us on the radio and with you guys being with us here on the radio. So it's been a multifaceted adventure.
Absolutely. And, this would be 1,000 shows. If I do 3 more, I'll have passed Jack Benny's record for his program. And that was one of the longest running radio programs ever. So he did 1,003, they tell me. So.
Hey, listen, I'm old enough to remember Jack Benny's program. Jack in Rochester, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So, good morning, Darry Stuart.
Well, good morning, Dave, and good morning, Robert. And it's great to be on the 1,000 show. I'm really, really proud of that. And I'll be embarking on my 50th year of involvement with TMC.
Wow.
And so this is just a great event. And Dave, from the first show that I got involved and met you, it's been great to know you. And it's been a lot of fun with this to share, especially in the early days of muffler bearings, as you remember that show.
Yes, indeed. I certainly do.
Yeah, that was our first show with Darry. We had a caller call in and said, I'm having a problem with muffler bearings. Of course, we know that's just a gag, but we had fun with it.
And, of course, the blinker fluid thing went on for a little while, too.
That's only in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
We've had so many different shows, especially in the early days when the drivers would call in and ask questions. And then, we did follow up on quite a few of those after the show. Many of them, both for curiosity and to help the whoever was calling in, and it was really exciting because we get to learn from it. And one of the ones that I remember very distinctly is, there's always an issue about fuel in the beginning of winter, and we talk about it at TMC at Shop Talk and Fleet Talk about fuel. And one of I was telling the story of call it very basic pieces of fuel management. And an owner-operator called in, and he verified as an owner-operator for years operating in Canada, then northern U.S., what he did to operate, which was exactly what we had been talking about at many shows and at many TMC sessions. So that was one that I remember very, very distinctly. And if he's listening, I want to thank him. And that show was about what, Robert? Maybe, 15 years ago? It was a long time.
It's a long time.
Give or take.
Another one that comes to mind, too, is what we get advice from the listeners about what things to study. And with respect to visibility, for example, one time we had Jerry Hubble on the program, who's our visibility expert, had been on the show many times, and they were trying to figure out, what are some things we can do to improve? And the driver said, figure out how to make the windshield wipers not reduce my visibility out of my rearview mirrors because it's throwing the water over on the rearview mirrors.
I was just thinking of that, yeah.
Yeah, that's a classic one. We actually acted on that, and then there were the designs that you see now in the modern vehicles, the aerodynamic designs. They were improved, so not only do they save fuel, but they also make sure the water doesn't go on the rear-facing mirrors. So,
and let's go back to the big arenas where we all get together 2 or 3 times a year. Super Tech, we Brought Super Tech to the radio, and my first impression of Super Tech was quiet intensity. I mean, you could hear a pin drop, and if there wasn't an engine running, you could hear a pin drop because these guys and girls in there were just working on those puzzle stations, the challenge. I forget the exact term here. I forget a lot of stuff nowadays, but it's just an incredible way to expand the horizons for a lot of folks, I think, not just on the driving side of things, but on the tech side, because the guys on the tech side are having a problem recruiting people, getting young kids interested in things like that. But with TMC, you guys have really overcome a lot of those hurdles in terms of kind of getting the word out to these kids that, wait a minute, this ain't your granddad's truck anymore.
That's true. You know, the National Technician Skills Competition, which you're referring to, is also celebrating its 20th year this year. And they started in 2005, and we're going to be doing our 20th rendition of this event at our fall meeting in Raleigh, North Carolina in September.
Maybe we'll get to the 1,000th year of Tech Talk before it's all over.
That session within TMC, Dave and Robert, you know, it has brought such credibility to the importance of the mechanic now known as a technician. And, you know, the skills that they have, most people don't realize that this is a trade that requires a lot of electrical type skills and all the way back to the basics. But it has really brought it to a level that has brought real professionalism to the industry.
The technologies that have advanced us and our reach here at RadioNemo, Road Gang Radio, has metamorphosized, if you will, and has been improved upon in terms of the stuff that we have now. All of our gear is much smaller than it used to be. I remember back in the 1980s when I was going out to the truck stop remote broadcasts at midnight, I used to have have a hand truck to bring in all the gear I needed. We used to have to drop 3 long-distance telephone lines, one to get the program to the truck stop, one to get the program back to the studio, one for me and John Parker, the late, great John Parker, the Dean of Truth, back at the studios here in New Orleans at that time. And all of that kind of stuff, just all of that equipment just kind of reduced in size to where it's almost in a suitcase now, and you have a radio station in a suitcase. The same is true on the trucking tech side, too. Not so much things are smaller, but I remember a time when a representative from one of the big OEMs, and this goes back a lot of years, and Darry, you probably can relate to the decade here, but he says, well, you know, there are 6 computers under the hood of that truck. And it's like, wait a minute, there's probably 600 computers under there now. So we have all kind of just gone with this technological flow into the future. And it's been a remarkable, as you say, it's been a remarkable ride, Robert.
Yeah, and you think about, you know, you're talking about how the making things smaller in terms of radio gear. Well, just think about the explosion of extra technology on the truck. There's tons more capability on the vehicle. The vehicle is now becoming self-diagnosing, almost self-aware, probably will be self-aware when AI fully kicks in. And the trailers are now smart. They weren't smart back when we started the program in 2005, and now smart trailers are just about everywhere. So it's really revolutionized the industry has over the last 20 years, and it's going to be exciting to see what the next 20 years brings.
Yeah,
you know, it has really the technology level and the computers and all the controls within it, and with AI coming, it certainly will help the diagnostics part of the vehicles. But we got to remember that, you know, the basic part of the truck has not changed. You know, there's still tires on it, there's still brakes on it, there's still the mechanical aspect of it, whether it's batteries and certain things within a vehicle that sometimes we tend to forget, and we get overpowered by the level of technology and the computerization. But there's still a very strong basic level of understanding of those mechanical skills. And we can't get lost in the technology to where we forget what the most basic pieces of that, and that's where the technician comes in. He now has to be an electrical genius, okay, and not forgetting where he started with basic PMs and brakes and those type of repairs that are critical to operate on the highway today.
That blinker fluid is not going to fill itself.
So interestingly enough, Dave, we do a survey every quarter at TMC asking, what is your top 5 concerns that keep you up at night when it comes to equipment issues? And the number one issue the last quarter was diagnostics, and it speaks right back to the issue of vehicle complexity, if you ask me. We asked them from a list of possible 85, 90 choices, what keeps you up at night? This time, for the first time, diagnostics was number 1. But to Darry's point, technician shortage and tires were numbers 2 and 3 respectively. So, it all comes down to, if you don't have the boots on the ground, so to speak, to fix the truck, because that's what's required. You can diagnose it all you want to automatically. Telematically is great, but until the truck can fix itself, the technician is really the key element here into making sure that the rig is ready to roll.
Rick Mahalik.
At one time, Dave, what was really important in the mind of fleet managers was oil, filters, and grease. That is no longer the most important part of the truck. The key part of the truck today is batteries and electronics, because it doesn't take much to set off an ECM or something on a vehicle, or a control module, cab control module. So the electronics, in my opinion, has gone way up the ladder of importance, along with managing the cooling system because of EGR and stuff. So once that oil was the primary concern of fleet mechanics and fleet managers, that is, my opinion, has fallen down on the list, because the quality of the lubrication products are so good. But the real issue comes with the basic principles of battery maintenance.
It's interesting. I'm thinking of a box of Crayolas right now, especially when you speak about coolants. It's like, what color is antifreeze? Well, it's green, of course. Well, what shade of green? And wait, there's the pink and the blue and the yellow and the gray and all of that stuff. We have an array of colors in the world of hydrogen now. They're talking about green hydrogen and blue hydrogen, gray hydrogen, black hydrogen, yellow hydrogen, all of these things. And then when it comes down to the oil itself, how many oil standards have been changed and moved up the ladder, Robert, since Tech Talk started going back to 2004?
I think 4, actually, and there's a new one coming out, I think, in 2027, whatever the new PC is, PC 13, 14, whichever one it is. I can't remember the number. But there's been a number of changes, mainly to deal with soot and the effects of the increasing after-treatment systems, which are also something that's high on the list of what keeps fleet managers up at night. And that was really an issue back in 2005. So in some ways, it's gotten a little better. In some ways, it's the same thing. We're still worried about it.
Yeah, well, certainly, Robert, the emissions part of the vehicle in the early days, when it really started hitting us, there was a lack of acceptance that we were going to have to spend money to manage emissions. And, I was deeply involved in a lot of those early days of controversy on the electronic engines and emissions and DPFs and the DOCs. And a lot of that came down to a lack of understanding, but it was also the acceptance that it was something we were going to have to maintain. And where oil and grease was the important factor for many, many, many years in our careers, it was difficult to understand and switch to that we were going to have to spend money and work on emissions and understand it. And the technology level and the issues that created the engine lights, so to say, became very confusing. And the diagnostics of today have made it much easier. So it's a better understanding and easier. But that was very hard for the industry to accept, that we were going to have to spend money on emissions like tires, oil, and brakes.
I remember.
Well, it's also important to note. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, no, I was just going to say very quickly, I remember when the diesel particulate filter was introduced, the DPF, and we went out to do a broadcast with one of the OEMs. I won't mention names. And the guy says, here's the DPF. This is what it looks like. You just strap it onto the side of the frame and you're good to go. and I'm going to take it off and put it back on. And he did in about 20 minutes. Then we all got on ladders with our handkerchiefs. I still have my handkerchief in an old King Edward cigar box in the closet. We stood up there on the ladder, held that handkerchief over that exhaust pipe for as long as we could stand the heat. And he says, now smell it. And it smelled like a freshly ironed shirt. I mean, it was wonderful. And it was like, there it is, and that's all you got to worry about. And then I'll use this term advisedly. An entire cottage industry was then born on how to clean and maintain the DPF and how to get all of that impacted stuff out of there. And wow, you never know until you walk through that door what's on the other side, do you?
And part of the
Dave,
the consent decree, when it happened at the time when Tech Talk started, the industry wasn't really ready for the technology. It was being pulled ahead 18 to 24 months before it was supposed to. And so that's why people were cutting holes in their hoods, trying to figure out how to deal with the increased heat on the hot side of the engine, because things like belts were, failing prematurely, hoses, even the washer fluid tanks were boiling because of the increased heat nobody expected.
Like the Wicked Witch of the West. I'm melting.
Yeah. It's gotten much better.
Yeah. At the Nashville, I can't remember the exact year, but at the Nashville TMC meeting, after that meeting, there was one of the suppliers of fan drives, and I had a client in Nashville, and we went down and we literally did dyno tests for under hood temperatures, took a skill saw and put a hood scoop on it to help cool it down, and on a drive actually hung a hot dog on the side of the hood. We raised the hood up with some spacers, and within 100-mile ride, we cooked a hot dog. It was so hot. But there was those basic things that came from TMC and trying to understand what we were up against.
Yeah.
And so it's, as much as things have changed since that time, a lot of those things are still the same. We're still managing the basic pieces of tires and brakes and good PMs.
One of the things that you guys do on Tech Talk, everybody through the years and through the segments, is to point up some specific things that are going on in terms of here's maybe a problem or here's what's happening next. And today's program is supposed to be about discussing the latest maintenance and repair trends. We haven't really done that very much, but we got a couple of minutes here. Is there anything that is at the top of your list, Darry? And then Robert, of course, you guys talk for a bit here.
Yeah,
let's talk a little bit about disc brakes.
Yeah, that's the current subject. Robert and I have had some discussion, and although disc brakes have done a phenomenal job, it's one of those additions to a vehicle that after a number of years, being so good that they are and so used to those on automotive vehicles, it almost tends to be something that is not looked at as close as it should. And it is currently rearing its ugly head on trailers, and more so from corrosion and the fact of not looking at trailers as much so in a low mileage application. The corrosion is creeping in and creating more problems than we would like to see, because if a trailer only does 30,000 miles a year, so to say, and sits a lot, it doesn't get the advantage of pressure washing by driving in a rainstorm. So that is rearing its ugly head, and quite honestly, it's really kind of fresh, because trailers now are 7 or 8 years with disc brakes on trails. They work phenomenal, but they need a little more attention than we realize in the industry. You want to add to that, Robert?
Well, yeah, here's the other thing, too. We're finding out that if you weren't very good at maintaining S-cam brakes, you're probably not very good at maintaining disc brakes because it does require maintenance. It's not maintenance free. And if you put them on the trailers, like you say, it's almost like you can't do set it and forget it. You have to maintain these. And add to that, if you're in an operation where you're in a lot of aggregate, on off-road or whatever, it's going to make it even worse, because maybe the disc brakes aren't suited for that particular application. So, you really have to pay attention to the maintenance requirements on disc brakes. They're not as maintenance sensitive, let's say, as an S-Cam. But if you don't pay attention to it, you're going to end up with increased costs. And the advantages that you thought you're going to see from the disc brakes may evaporate.
Darry, you mentioned corrosion, and corrosion was the topic of contention for a lot of episodes of Tech Talk. I'm thinking Roy Gambrell and his photo albums that he brought into the studio. Oh, my goodness gracious alive.
Roy really is the godfather of rust jacking.
Yes.
And we talk about him from time to time at the meeting that, and his real issue, because rust jacking was real, his real issue was that nobody was seeing it or looking close enough, which is the exact same thing that is happening to disc brakes on trailers, that it's kind of a forgotten component because it does operate so well. But as time goes by and corrosion, and then now with the brake pads, the copper being taken out of the brake pads, the pads are not getting the life on trailers. Even though there was a little survey done that Robert and I talked about that said that they were doing much better on trailers, it really doesn't. And then if it gets into the rotors, and the majority of the manufacturing rotors are inboard, you can have a labor catastrophe, downtime, and an expense that far exceeds proper maintenance on drum brakes.
It seems like it went like a flash from 2004 to 2025. This went by like a flash from 9 o'clock in the morning to 9:30. So, as we always would ask at the end of each Tech Talk, Robert Braswell, who's on deck for next week's Tech Talk, episode 1001?
Well, next week we're going to be talking about right to repair issues with Edward Coe. He is the executive director of the CVSN, and we're looking forward to a great discussion on what you need to know about impediments that may be there that help you, that prevent you from fixing your truck.
If we started listing off the roster, that's all we would have done. But I just want to say to you, Darry, and to all of your compadres, you and Robert, Jack Legler, the whole gang, thank you so much for couple of decades of some incredible information, camaraderie, and good programming, and we are looking forward to 1001 and beyond. Tech Talk TMC.